the record reflect that I have been characterized as the chair, by the chair as being honorable, I take it and I accept it.
Thank you. Okay, that's why we are a team. I think there is a brilliant suggestion here that advocates, the points you raised from 1 to 5, and the essence of those paragraphs is that the committee should not consider or proceed with the evidence relating to paragraph 8. That's the essence of, yes. We have agreed with you.
Thank you.
So 1 to 5 is accepted.
Thank you.
So the committee won't consider, in view of the issues that you raised, anyway, after the committee discussed that even area before. So the committee won't consider any evidence, Mr. Goddard's evidence, 7 and 8. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, we're left with 6, 7, and 8 and 9. Now, because here we don't quite agree with you. Whilst we agree with you 1 to 5, 6 to 9, we don't quite agree with you. So we can give an opportunity to motivate or amplify these issues.
Thank you very much, Chair. Honorable Chair and Honorable Members of Parliament, the essential issue that ought to be related to is the difference between parliamentary privilege and contempt of Parliament. Those two acts are fundamentally different. And you will note that the two acts are covered separately under the Privileges and Immunities Powers Act. Relates to a breach of one of those tenets that are accorded a parliamentary, an individual appearing or who is under the guise and protection of a member of Parliament. It therefore follows that when one then deals with contempt of Parliament, such contempt of Parliament, again, is an act that is defined and enumerated separately under Part 5 of the Privileges and Immunities and Powers of Parliament Act. So essentially, in motivation, you will note that at law, a breach of parliamentary privilege can only be committed by a member of Parliament. It cannot be committed by an ordinary member of society. Whereas contempt of Parliament is essentially an act which is restricted to an individual who has been given a direction, or who has been given an order, or who has to perform an act by operation of a parliamentary directive. So once the parameters of this committee are asking the committee to make an adjudication of whether there was a breach of immunity amounting to a parliamentary privilege, it means that the honourable member is being asked to answer to his conduct as a member of Parliament, but also as a member of society, which he is not. In this particular instance, we move that the committee makes a ruling on whether or not it is investigating the conduct of Mr. Honorable Mliswa as a member of Parliament, or he is being investigated as an individual having broken a tenet of Parliament. And to illustrate the point, once one looks at Part 5 of the Act that I have mentioned, you will note that it is usually, and it is actually in fact in every instance where Parliament is given a directive. Take for instance, Honourable Chair gives me a directive to say, Tawanda Juwarara, please sit down. And I continue talking. That constitutes a contempt of Parliament, because Parliament would have given a direction. Whereas, when you look at parliamentary privilege, it means that Honorable Mliswa cannot be brought before a court of law, cannot be asked to answer an allegation, or has been given and accorded a certain protection, such as the freedom to say whatever he wants in Parliament. So in that end, when one breaches that privilege, he would be breaching a tenet of established law. Whereas when one breaches conduct under parliamentary contempt, you are breaching a directive. So in this particular instance, all that we ask, and which is important because you would have to then give a report to the main parliament, is you cannot conflate the two together because they are defined by statute. Now, what is also important to note is that these proceedings are not in terms of the code and conduct of parliamentarians. And that's an important aspect. Because if these proceedings were in terms of the code of conduct, the code of conduct has got different ways of dealing with complaints. And if you have breached the code of conduct, you would have to enumerate the specific section and subsection that to say, Honorable Mliswa, you did not conform to these particular parameters. And these are the allegations that you are facing. So there are three ways of dealing with an individual in respect of parliamentary discipline. Number one, you can deal with an individual under the immunity as a breach of privilege, and that for that the allegation has to be that you have violated the privilege we accord you as a parliamentarian. Number two, you can relate to an individual or the general mass of the public under the term contempt of Parliament, where a directive has been given by Parliament or a standing order has been given by Parliament, which you have then violated, or the third way, which was created under the Code of Conduct. The Code of Conduct then allows a substrata of discipline for members of Parliament. And in this particular instance, you will note that the terms of reference have restricted themselves to either a breach of parliamentary privilege or contempt of Parliament. So the submission that we make, which is at paragraph number 9, is that at the end, may the committee rule whether it is investigating a breach of parliamentary privilege, and we be told which of those parliamentary privileges, because there are many, which of those parliamentary privileges Honorable Mliswa is being alleged to have breached. Then, or is Parliament investigating an act of contempt of Parliament, which has to be relating to the specific provisions of the Privileges and Immunities Powers Act, and then tell us which subsection it is. So we are not objecting to the hearing. What we are objecting to is the adjudication and how that adjudication is evaluated, because the honorable member has to come before you and tell you that, yes, I might have done this conduct, because he would have been able to know which section and then evaluate his conduct against that section and then either confess or avoid. So all we are asking for is particularity so that the honorable member is able to confess or avoid. Those would be my submissions. Unless the
meeting with the briefing stood down.
That is not. With all again, I will not accept that request. Not accept that you understand.
It's just briefly for a short period.
Yeah, but I think more about this is we cannot send people out on this one. But you can those want to share with us come over here.
Kids in the gallery. Now they are gone.
Yes, no more parliamentary business. Hello? Hello, can you sit? Can you come back and sit so that we will greet you? school? College, what's college? Excel College. Thank you for coming. This is Parliament. It's called the National Assembly Chamber. And anyway, the second chamber that side called the Senate. What you witnessed is a committee called the Privileges Committee conducting a hearing. So we thank you very much for coming. You want to leave? I'm now handing over to Mr. Goddard. You are the one first to present your formal complaint and allegations.
J R Goddard, swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the whole truth, so help me God. Thank you.
Thank you. Take your seat.
Chair, may I ask that Mr. Goddard takes this position again? Mr. Goddard, the committee is in possession of an affidavit that you attested to on the 28th of February 2019. In your affidavit, you narrate events that relate to the inquiry of the committee. Do you still abide by the contents of your affidavit?
Yes, I do, ma'am.
Do you wish to add or subtract any detail to or from your affidavit?
Ma'am, the affidavit is a summary of a great deal of events that occurred. You know, as far as I'm aware, everything that is in there summarizes what happened. If there is something else at a later date, I can always, elaborate on it.
May you state for the record how you came to know Mr. Shepherd Tundia?
It was in late August, early September last year. I was on holiday and I was repeatedly telephoned. It was actually over a weekend by Mr. Tundia. Mr. Shepherd Tundia said that he was the brother of a friend of mine called Oliver Rugube. Oliver Rugube owns Oliken Engineering in Kwekwe. Oliken Engineering are a subcontractor of ours and have worked with us on many projects. And he said he was Oliver Rugube's brother, and he'd been recommended to me by Oliver Rugube. He explained that. Should I carry on now? Mr. Tundia explained to me over the telephone that he had been dispatched to Wankie, as I understood, by the President's office, and that it was his function to improve efficiencies at Wankie. And with this in mind, was it possible that we could meet? I was still on holiday for, I think, about 10 days. And so we made an arrangement to meet, I don't have the exact date, late in August, beginning of September, and we met in our Bulawayo office.
In your affidavit, you state that you were attempting to get a contract to mine in Wankie. Can you explain what measures you took to secure a mining contract to mine in Wankie?
Ma'am, I'm not aware that I was looking for a contract. Rather, Mr. Shepherd Tundia said that they were having problems. He'd been sent to Wankie by the President's office to sort out the inefficiencies at Wankie, that the contractor there, Motor Angel, was charging in foreign currency, which was prejudicial to the government, and was also overcharging and was also over measuring, and therefore there was that he, Shepherd Tundia, was very anxious to get our company, who had been mining coal in the Wankie in the Wankie area since 2007. We'd been mining there for 11 years. He was very anxious to, and we have a very good reputation for doing work well. He was anxious to get us there to replace Motor Angel.
In your affidavit, you state in paragraph 3 that you met with members of the Committee on Mines at your Harare office in November 2018. Can you tell this committee who convened the meeting?
Ma'am, I was dealing with some matters on the farm at Shangani, and on the farm we don't have cell phone signal, and so I believe it would have been the Monday and the Tuesday before the Wednesday of that meeting. I was on the farm, and on the Tuesday I received many messages to say that Shepherd Dundia was very anxious to meet me, and please could I make contact with him. So I went to a high spot on the farm, and I telephoned Mr. Dundia, and he said to me that he needed to speak to me very, very urgently about this contract in Wankie. And where was I? I said I was on the farm. He said, could he meet me in Shangani, where we have a workshop and an office? I said, yes, no problem. And I travelled to Shangani and met him. It was about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That would have been the Wednesday. I was Wednesday, I believe, the 15th of September of November. Mr. Dundia said it was very, very important that I meet this Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Mines, because they were going to Wankie the next day. They were flying to Wankie the next day, and it was very important that I meet them. I said to them, hey, I'm in Shangani, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, can I not drive to Wankie and see them instead in Wankie? And Mr. Dundia said, no, it's very important, you've got to meet them. And he explained some things about the Wankie Colliery Company being put under, is it management? Okay, and this Parliamentary Portfolio Committee needed to see me about the Motor Angel contract and the possibility of us taking that over. Okay, it was quite vague. So I said, okay, all right. If you say it's very, very important, I will change my arrangements. And I got in my vehicle, and I travelled to Harare. And in fact, actually, most of the way to Harare, I was travelling behind Mr. Shepherd Dundia. We got to Harare about 7:30 that evening, and on the way he was telephoning me. I was saying, where are we going to meet? And he made a few suggestions of different places, and then I said, well, look, do you want to just meet at our office? And he said that would be very good. So I contacted the office manager, a young girl called Ricky Lee Wild, and I asked her if she could just open up the office and put some water and make sure there was tea and coffee if anybody wanted that. And we arrived at the office, and Ricky was there. She opened up, and we went up and we sat down, and I was very much unsure of exactly what was happening. I just knew that Mr. Dundia had said this was very important. So I sat there, and after some time, should I stop there now?
No,
Carry on. After some time, I heard vehicles come up outside, and I heard people coming up the stairs, and Mr. Shepherd Dundia escorted Mr. Mliswa, Honourable Mliswa, Honourable Chikomba, Honourable Annelies Ndebele, and Honourable Prince Vanda up, and they sat down, and then they introduced themselves, and I said, hello, how are you? And spoke a little bit, very general talk. I was kind of like very confused as to what was happening. I just remembered that on my way up from Shangani, when I was following behind Mr. Tundia in his vehicle, I thought to myself it would be useful if I asked our mining director, David Stein, who was at Ngezi, if he wouldn't join us. So I'd actually telephoned him, and he had also driven to, he'd come to Sulu, to the roundabout at Sulu, and then he got in my vehicle and we drove together to Harare. So our mining director, David Stein, was with me. And when David Stein got into my vehicle at Sulu, and he said to me, what's this about, Jim? I said, I don't really know, David. Just Shepherd Tundia said, we've got to get to Harare and come and see this portfolio committee. Apparently they're going to Wankie tomorrow. It's very important we see them. So, I was very much in the dark. We're now in the office in Harare. It's probably about 8 o'clock at night, 7, 4 to 8 o'clock at night. Mr. Honorable Mliswa spoke for a long time, maybe 30, 40 minutes, about the fact that His Excellency was very much encouraging, sort of like members of government to join up with, the private industry to make clever partnerships to improve the operation of our economy. And he explained this and he explained, and he told me that the committee was a very powerful committee, and that they had the powers to do all sorts of things with regards to the mines in Zimbabwe which fell under their control. He explained to me that they were going to Wankie the next day. They were flying to Wankie first thing the next day, and that they were going to go and audit the Motor Angel contract and assess for themselves whether the Motor Angel contract was a good contract or not a good contract, and that they had the powers to give us the contract to mine the coal at Wankie. I must say that, when you question, or when you speak to David Stein later, he will confirm the Wankie contract was something that we would have liked in the long term, but in September, October, November last year, it was a contract that would have been very inconvenient for us, because the volumes that Mr. Shepherd Tundia had indicated to us needed to be mined were of far greater quantity than we could have managed with the equipment that we had available, and we would have needed to have bought new equipment to do the work, because our equipment was gainfully and fully employed at Pixton Paris Gold Mine and at Ngezi Platinum Mine. And so we sat there, and Mr. Temba Mliswa did most of the talking, and I was, like I said, not sure exactly what was happening, so I just listened. Every now and then made a bit of a comment, but I just listened. Must I carry on?
In your affidavit, you state that an honourable member advised you that the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Mines would be able to assist your company to obtain a mining contract from Wangie Colliery Company Limited. Which honourable member advised you that they would be able to assist?
It was a message that was communicated to me generally by, I would say, by Temba Mliswa, Honourable Temba Mliswa, and by Honourable Chikomba, Leonard Chikomba.
In your opinion, was the meeting stated in your paragraph 3, in paragraph 3 of your affidavit, a meeting with the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Mines?
I beg your pardon?
In your opinion, was the meeting stated in paragraph 3 of your affidavit, a meeting with the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Mines?
It's the meeting that we had in Harare. As far as I was concerned, Shepherd Tundia had brought me to Harare, and I was meeting to meet with the parliamentary portfolio. I mean, the very first thing that Honourable Mliswa did when he came up was he handed out his business card, and his business card, indicated that he was the chairman of the parliamentary portfolio on mine. So yes, and so far as I was aware, I wasn't meeting them individually. I was meeting them as introduced to me, having been introduced by Shepherd today. I was meeting with the parliamentary portfolio.
Okay, Mr. Tundia in his affidavit stated that the committee requested a facilitation fee of 400,000. Do you recall any discussion to that effect?
Yes, ma'am, I do. What happened was, after we'd spoken generally, like I said, for about 30-40 minutes, Honourable Mliswa excused himself. He said he had an appointment with his family, dinner with his family, and he excused himself and went downstairs. I believe, it was a long time ago, I believe I escorted him down and said goodbye and shook hands with him, and I believe he then drove off. And then I returned upstairs to where we'd had the meeting on the first floor of the NASA building there. While I'd gone down with Honourable Mliswa, kind of like everything upstairs, it kind of like was being concluded and wrapped up. So we shook hands and everybody started to move downstairs. And then when we got downstairs, there's a little veranda, and we stepped off the veranda and we walked to the car park, and there was like 3 cars, I think. There was one car there, one there, and one there. This car here was Mr. Shepherd Tundia's. That car there was, I believe, the car that Mr. Aneles Ndebele went and got into and sat in, and then there was one other car, I believe. But yes, when we stepped off the veranda, they were shaking hands and goodbye and farewells, and that was when I believe Honourable Chikomba said to Shepherd Tundia, I don't speak Shona, but they were speaking in Shona, and I heard the word something, and with that I sort of stepped forward towards them, and I said, sorry, Shepherd, is there something else that you need to talk to me about? And then Shepherd Tundia turned around to me and he said to me, these guys have got to go to Wankie tomorrow. There's people there. They've got to persuade and encourage and give them and give them decisions. It'll be a lot easier for them if they've got something. So I said, something? What do you mean by something? So he said, well, something that they can go there and that they can use as leverage and give to people there. So I said, Shepherd, I don't know about this. And he said, I know, Mr. Chow, he was, he used to call me Mr. Chow. He said, no, Mr. Chow, he said, don't worry. He said, you know how it is, and you've lived in Zimbabwe a long time, and you know how it is. We need to do something. So I said, something. How much is something? And then he went back, I believe. Like I said, this is 5 months, 6 months ago now, 4 months ago, and I can't recall exactly the words and exactly the detail, but I think he turned around to them, and there was more discussion in Shona, and then he came back to me and he said 400,000. And I said, 400,000 what? He said $400,000, and I said, bond. And he said, yeah, bond. So I said, that's a lot of money. What's this for? And he said, Mr. J R, you know how it is. Up there there will be people, and they need to encourage people, and they need to persuade people. And I said, that's too much. I'm not, I could never justify that. I've got a board of directors who I've got to answer to. I mean, that's bribery. I can't do that. I can't do that. At which point, he then turned around again, and as I recall, he came back to me and he said, well, how about you do 200,000, half, and then when the contract is signed, you can pay the other half. And I said, I think I might even have said in Ndebele, I think I might even have said in Ndebele, but I can't remember exactly. But I was reluctant. I wasn't happy. Yeah. Was the mode of payment discussed? Well, then Mr. Tundia. Then I said to Mr. Tundia, I said, and this money, what happens to this money? You do cash? Because, or is it a check payment? Is it a transfer? And with that, Mr. Honorable Chukomba said, you can put it into my account. And I said, your account? And he said, yes, give me a piece of paper. And I believe Ricky Lee Wild ran to get a piece of paper, and then he wrote on that piece of paper his banking details, and he said to deposit 200,000 in that account. And I said, and so then I said to them, I said, I'm very uncomfortable with this sort of thing. It was maybe he anticipated what was going to happen, because he excused himself and he went and climbed in that car from that side, and he went around the car and climbed in the door, the other door, and so he wasn't there. It was just Honorable Chukomba, Honorable Prince Sabanda, and Mr. Shepherd Dundia who were there. And so then when I said, listen, I think that it's best I just go away and think about this. I mentioned, I said, I will need to speak to Mr. Mafugidze, he's our administration director. I will need to speak to him and get some advice from him. Please, can we adjourn this matter until tomorrow? So they then got in their cars and they drove away. And I then got in my car with David Steyn. And as soon as we got into the car, we started to discuss it, and when we got back to the flat where I stay, when I'm in Harare, we got onto the telephone straight away with, it was now 9 o'clock, 9:30 at night now. We got straight away onto the telephone to Mr. Mafugidze to say, Doug, what do we do here? And Douglas said, no, absolutely no way. And I said, and he said, absolutely no way. So he said, listen, let me think about this whole matter and decide how we should play it. Because at that point in time, too, when Mr. Honorable Mliswa was talking before he departed, he had said that the Wankie Colliery was under management, and that management structure was headed or being led by Minister of Justice, I think, Minister of Justice, Mr. Zihambi. And the suggestion was that we needed to go and meet with Minister Zihambi the next day. When David Steyn and I got home, And we telephoned Doug. Doug said, absolutely no way. And then Doug also said, you mustn't meet Zihambi, Minister Zihambi. Just get in your car and come away from Harare as quickly as possible. So we got in the car and we drove home. And then, now if I'd just like to add a little bit more. As we were approaching Salou, we were coming down that hill and the phone rang. And these are details that I didn't put in my statement because otherwise the statement would have been just too long. But as we were coming down that hill towards Salou, the phone rang, and it was Honourable Anele Ndebele. And he said to me that he was very unhappy with what had happened the previous night. And he just wanted to know that, he wanted me to know that he had no part in it, and he wanted nothing to do with it, and he was speaking to me in Ndebele. Okay, it comes from Polokwane. He was speaking to me in Ndebele, and he said, again, I can't recall the exact words, but he said to me that I should be very careful. He said, just be very, very careful. I think the words he said was Nazelela Buhle. So we then got to Salou, which was David Steyn was to be go by himself back to Ngezi because he was working in Ngezi, and I would have carried on back home. And we then phoned Doug again. We had maybe another 30-minute conversation with Doug just to confirm that everything that we'd done was right and correct and square and straight. Doug has been working with us since 1986, over 33 years now working with us, and he's our administration director, and we always refer to him with matters that are sort of like outside of our experience, and he kind of like advises us and directs us.
Following that meeting, did any of the members follow up on the thing that has been discussed?
Not quite.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Now, Mr. Goddard, two things that we need clarified from you. The first one, did Honorable Temba Mliswa make any financial request for him meeting you?
Before we met?
Yes.
No.
Did Honorable Temba Mliswa ask you for any financial benefit during the meeting?
No. No, definitely not.
Did Honorable Temba Mliswa ask you for any financial benefit after the meeting?
Well, the following week he did, yes.
I'm asking about after the meeting, did he ask you for $400,000?
With regards to the $400,000, Honourable Temba Mliswa never mentioned the sum, never asked for anything. With regards to the $400,000, Honourable Temba Mliswa left to go home with his family before any money or anything like, or any something or anything like that was discussed.
Did any member of this House state that Honorable Temba Mliswa participated in any financial request from you?
I beg your pardon?
Let me be clear. You confirm that you had subsequent discussions with other members of Parliament in respect of this demand for 400,000. You spoke about Honorable Ndebele.
Yes.
Did Honorable Ndebele advise you that Honorable Temba Mliswa was part and parcel of the request for financial benefit from you?
No, he didn't.
Now that we've got this out of the way, let us go to some specifics. You do remember that you signed an affidavit and submitted an affidavit to Parliament dated the 28th of February 2019.
yes, yes. I think that's the one here, yes. Yes?
This might sound insulting, but I need you to be clear. Were you drunk when you wrote this affidavit?
I think so, no?
Were you under the impairment of any mind-altering substance?
No, I don't think so. I don't take any substance.
So you were of sober mind when you wrote this affidavit?
I believe so.
And at the end of the affidavit, you do confirm that you conscientiously believed everything you've stated to be true in that affidavit.
I believe so, yes.
Now, why is it today you suddenly remember that Honorable Mliswa was the one who spoke at the meeting and it's not mentioned in your affidavit?
You know, these affidavits are done, you know, you're trying to remember back, and, you know, yeah, that's one thing. You know, like for instance, the meeting with Honourable Temba Mliswa and the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee in Harare on the 15th of November. If you recall, I said that I'd been on the farm for 2 days, okay, and received these messages. You know, I then drove from the farm to Harare, which is 360 kilometers. So I'd had a whole day in the sun, and then, okay, and then,
Witness,
if I may just finish, please.
Witness, I do not want to waste the Honourable Chair's time, neither the Honourable members. I asked you a simple question. Why is there a discrepancy between the oath, the statement you now state under oath, and the statement you stated under oath on the 28th of February? They are different because that Honourable Mliswa said anything in the meeting of the 15th of November 2018.
I believe I do state it.
Thank you. Can you please show us and state what Honourable Temba Mliswa said in the meeting of the 15th of November 2018?
The J R Goddard team was very much surprised by the reiterated statement that His Excellency Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa was fully aware and supported such initiatives by members of government to participate in profit-sharing schemes with the corporate sectors involved in business.
Please read your affidavit again. Where do you state that it's Honourable Mliswa who said that? In your affidavit. Your own affidavit, which you say you were conscious, you were not under any mind-altering substance. Where do you say Honourable Temba Mliswa said anything in the meeting?
Well, I said I met I together with Mr. David Stanley and followed Mr. Shepherd to Harare that evening and met with Honourable Temba Mliswa, Honourable Anele Ndebele, Honourable Leonard Chikoma, Honourable Prince Savanda, and thereafter this whole matter was discussed. I might not have said specifically that it was Honourable Temba Mliswa, but you know, this is a summation. This is a summary. You know, pardon me if I've left out that detail.
Now, cross-examination does not mean I have to be cross, but I'm going to become cross with you and I'll be with you for a considerable amount of time if you try to prevaricate. In your affidavit, you do not mention anything that Honourable Temba Mliswa said in the meeting. Can you confirm that for the committee?
I believe I did, yeah.
In paragraph, which paragraph? We don't want to waste time. There are other things I want to do. Can you confirm for the committee that there are no other portions where you've attributed any statement to?
Well, you know, all I would refer to is paragraph 6.
paragraph 6.
Yeah, and in paragraph 6, I'm referring to the general statement that was made by all members of the Portfolio Committee who were present at that meeting, which included Honourable Temba Mliswa.
Right. Do you confirm that paragraph 6 does not mention Temba Mliswa's name?
No, it doesn't, but it said, you know, I'm referring to the people who were there, who are these people here. Okay? And those people were the people that we discussed this matter with. Up until the point that Honourable Temba Mliswa excused himself to go and have dinner with his family, he was one of the, he was the chairman of the Portfolio Committee. He was the fellow who handed out his card at the beginning. He was the fellow who led the discussion principally.
All right, fine. So he led the discussion, that's what you're saying?
Yes, he did.
All right. Is he the one who invited you for this meeting?
No,
Honourable Mliswa is not the one who invited you.
definitely not. That was my first time to meet, to formally and properly meet Temba Mliswa was when he walked up the stairs into the office. You know, I've heard of him before, and I've brushed past him once or twice at functions and things like that, but I've never ever, that was the first time I'd ever spoken to him properly, direct one-to-one.
Now, who advised you of the agenda of the meeting?
Well, I wasn't advised by the agenda of the meeting. All I was advised by Mr. Shepard Tundia, when Mr. Shepard Tundia had spent quite some time trying to get hold of me when I was on the farm, and he drove to Shangani, which remember is 360 kilometers out of Harare.
Not interested. Please.
Okay.
Were you advised?
I never had an agenda.
You never had an agenda?
Now, all I had was a statement by Mr. Tundia that it was very important that I meet the Portfolio Committee on Mines who were going to Wankie the next day.
All right, thank you.
Who were flying to Wankie the next day.
They were flying to Wangie the next day.
That's right.
Now, did Honourable Mliswa invite you for the meeting?
No.
More importantly, was it the committee that invited you for the meeting?
No.
So you expect intelligent, honourable members of parliament to believe that a man of your business stature drove 400 kilometers, not knowing what the agenda was, to meet individuals you had never met before, to discuss an issue that you were not aware of?
Well, it was only that I'd had very positive discussions with Shepard Tundia. Shepard Tundia drove to Shangani. Shepard Tundia said, Mr. Goddard, come all the way here. It's important you come back with me. He said, I was actually going to Wankie, but it is important you come with me. Come, let's go back. And then Mr. Tundia even said it is so important that when the meeting is finished, I'm then going to have to turn around and I'm going to still have to go back to Wankie. And I said, okay, Shepard, I'll just change my program around. Not a problem. Let's go.
All right. So, Shepard Tundia was your agent.
No, he wasn't my agent. He was the guy who, insofar as I was concerned, had been requested by the President's office. You know, when Mr. Shepard Tundia met us the first time, he showed us a photograph of him with the flag behind him, sitting in an office. Every time I met him, he was driving one of these new Toyota twin cabs, and he had hanging from the rearview mirror one of those big government passes, and you know, and also the other thing, you know, he told me that he'd been sent by the President to Wankie to sort out Wankie.
The question is simple. I don't want to waste the Honourable Chair's and time and the Honourable Member's time. So I'm now having to control you in your testimony for the cross-examination because other people want to cross-examine. Right. Is Shepard Tundia your agent?
No, definitely not.
Did he postulate that he is an agent of Honorable Temba Mliswa?
No.
Thank you. Now we're making progress. Can I have mine? In all your discussions with Mr. Shepard Tundia, did he say he was... Can you please be clear for the Honorable Chair and the members?
If I recall, when we sat down and we'd shaken hands and whatnot, like I said, I was very uncertain what this was all about. I'd spent the whole day on the farm, and now I drove in 400 kilometers to Harare. Shepard Tundia stood up, and he always dealt with us very politely, very properly, very correctly, and he said, Mr. JR, this is Mr. Temba Mliswa, Honorable Temba Mliswa, the chairman of the parliamentary portfolio on mines, and he kind of like, if I recall correctly, he kind of like handed over the proceedings to Honorable Mliswa, and then Honorable Mliswa then leant back, and then he started to talk.
Right. Was he talking to you, giving you directions, or he was talking generally?
Generally. In fact, I was quite confused as to what was happening.
Ah. So, you are not aware of what his intentions were when he was talking?
No, I wasn't aware at all. Not at all.
Would you say Honorable Mliswa was rambling?
No, I wouldn't say he was rambling. He was speaking generally about, as I said, he was speaking generally about, as I understood it, His Excellency's encouraging government persons to be involved in private ventures with private practices. He spoke generally about recovering our economy, making our economy strong again, that sort of stuff.
Was he saying things that were negative or positive?
He was saying things that were neutral.
Were neutral?
Yeah, neutral, I would say.
All right. He was saying things that were neutral. Now, advise me about this statement, because we're hearing it for the first time from you, that Honorable Mliswa said that government people should participate in private enterprise. Is that what you claim he said to you?
Well, that's what I understood.
Okay, now there's a difference. Did he say that, or you understood that that's what he meant? Are those his exact words?
Well, I would say that certainly he implied it, certainly he intimated it.
So you are making an assumption, not reporting to us exactly what he said.
If I can recall, I can recall Temba Mliswa saying, Honorable Temba Mliswa saying, His Excellency is encouraging all senior members of government to get in, to be involved in private partnerships with the private sector, with a desire to get our country's economy up and running again.
Did you make any reference to Wange Kola?
What he did talk about.
Did he make in that statement? Was he making reference to Wange Kola, or was talking directly, in general?
No, he was talking generally the whole time.
Now let's talk about Wange Kola. What did Honorable Mliswa say to you directly about Wange Kola?
What he did tell me was, please remember that this was 5-6 months ago, at the end of a long day, and after 400 kilometers of drive from Shangani to Harare. But he did talk about Minister Zihambie and a management team which had taken over the operations of Wange Colliery, and because Wanky Colliery had been put under management, and that they were going there the next day, flying there the next day to go and audit, see what was happening.
To Ziyambi on account that the operations of mines were now under management.
That was something certainly that was discussed during the period that he was speaking. That was certainly that it was certainly discussed, but it was something that Douglas Mafupitse advised us to leave well alone, not to go and see him.
That's not my question. My question is, you were referred to someone else by Honorable Mliswa.
By the committee. I can't recall who in the committee. I believe it was Honorable Temba Mliswa who was speaking about Minister Zihambi, and I believe it was Honorable Temba Mliswa who spoke and said that he could organise us to see Minister Zihambi in the morning. I think there was even a time of 9 o'clock that was discussed, but it was something that we set aside. We didn't.
Is your memory good in respect of that particular aspect? Do you want us to depend on it because we seem to be prevaricating?
Well, I'm only recounting what I can recall.
Yes. Do you remember him specifically referring you to anybody else? If you don't, you don't.
I can remember him talking about Minister Zihambi. I can remember a time about 9 o'clock being discussed, but I can't recall. In fact, later that evening.
You're not sure?
No, later that evening when I got home with David Stein, I said to David, what's the story about Zihambi?
Ah, so you do not recall. You actually had somebody else to remind you of it.
Yeah, no, it was very, the whole thing was very, it was very uncertain. We didn't really know what we were. It was like a story that was unfolding as it went.
And you were never given any account details by Temba Mliswa or any.
Never. There was no discussion of money, or bribe, or 400,000, or anything before Mr. Mliswa, Honourable Mliswa went home. None at all.
None at all.
None at all.
That concludes.
Thank you.
Thank you. You were at great lengths to state that Shepherd Tundia was from the President's office, and Shepherd Tundia never denied it. So, to be truthful, sir, I don't know. I believe so. That's what he told me, but I don't know.
Thank you. So that we don't waste time. We don't want what we heard from some other people.
Okay?
We want what we know. So I'm saying, what sort of documentation was presented to you by Shepherd Tundia in support of the allegation that he had been seconded to Hon Colliery by the Zimbabwean Office of the President and Cabinet?
After he telephoned us initially, while I was on holiday, and when I returned, and when we met in Bulawayo, he then invited us to the Wanky Colliery Company. And when we went to the Wanky Colliery Company, we were shown into the Wanky Colliery boardroom.
Sorry, we don't need to spend the word here. My question is, what sort of evidence or identification was presented to you by Shepherd Tundia to show that he has been referred or seconded to Hon Colliery by the Zimbabwean Office of the President and Cabinet?
So that's what I'm
straightforward.
So that's what I'm trying to explain to you.
This is those documents that you received from him to show.
When we got to the Wanky Colliery Company, we were welcomed in, escorted by him and welcomed into the boardroom where there were members of the Wanky Colliery Company management there who gave a presentation to us on the mining that they required.
Did you understand my question?
I was shown no documents, sir. I was shown no documents. But I was, by his behaviour, by the way he, and events, I was led to believe that what he had told me was true.
Pardon me? his behavior showed that he had been seconded to Wangi Colliery by the office of the President in Cabinet. Is that what you are telling this committee?
So when we got to Wangi Colliery Company, we were met at the door, we were ushered in, they were expecting us. We sat in the boardroom, there was water around the table, there was maps on the wall, there was a presentation that had been prepared. We were then escorted around the pit, we were shown the pit. It was a very formal function. When we attend site visits, the officiating officer at the site visit doesn't show us identification. He shows us the works, and that is what Shepherd did.
I think we might waste time. Let me guide you. Don't be too narrative. Respond to questions. Is there a specific behavior of persons who are seconded to certain companies by the President and the Cabinet, which you said India had that behavior? What sort of behavior would you link to India in the office of the President and Cabinet, which then convinced you that there is no need to request any documentation?
I do not know that I would have had the power to ask for identification from him. Certainly, the authority that he commanded made me believe that he was genuine.
Thank you. So you dealt with Tundia basing on your belief that he was genuine?
Yes, sir. And every letter that we gave him,
don't waste time. I'm saying you dealt with Tundia basing on your belief that he was genuine.
That is correct, sir.
Thank you. After making these allegations, did you also still believe that Tundia was genuine?
Like I said, so this morning I actually asked Mafugidze what he thought. Up until this morning, I'm still not absolutely convinced.
Don't tell us about Mafugidze. I'm saying...
Up until this morning, I still am now unsure.
Thank you. In light of that doubt, what sort of businessmen are you to the general public and also to the committee who deals with people without verifying their identity?
Sir, we are contacted by a multitude of different people, different officers.
Don't waste our time. We are saying the conduct of believing as if you are in church without verifying gives a certain impression to the public or to anyone, even to the committee, in as far as your person is concerned. And in your own view, does that behavior reflect you as a straightforward business person?
Absolutely it does.
Thank you. Do you remember the contents of your paragraph 3?
I don't have my... I can have a look at it.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm reminded now.
Thank you. You just look at your starting line in paragraph 4. Just read the first two words.
After the meeting,
Thank you. Confirm this affidavit does not tell the committee or anyone what was discussed in that meeting.
I did my best to narrate it as best as I could. I'm not a professional. I did my best job to narrate it as I could.
You did your best in narrating what happened to the meeting. Is that what you are saying?
I did my best to narrate
Thank you.
a series of events that had lasted.
Thank you. Now that what talks of what happened to the meeting is only paragraph 3, which only talks of the 4 honorable members that were in that meeting. Is that the best that you can do as a seasoned business person in giving an account of the discussion or deliberations that occurred in a meeting? Simply listing attendees. Is that the best that you could do?
Well, it does go on in the subsequent paragraphs and give greater elaboration.
And you answer. And from the Vice President Mohadi.
Now, I've never received a letter from Vice President Mohadi, but I have from His Excellency.
Okay. Have you ever wrote letters to Vice President Mohadi?
Yes, I have.
Thank you. You can agree that when we talk of the office of the President, the Cabinet, you yourself, you were in touch with the highest office at those offices, but you never deemed it fit to verify Tundia's mandate from that office whom you even exchange letters with. Is that what you are telling this committee and everyone else who is here?
So that's an assumption on your part. When I met with Vice President Mohadi, I asked him about Shepherd Tundia, and he indicated to me that he would check and revert to me.
And up to now, is he still to revert to you?
Up to now, he's still to revert to me. He has not reverted to me.
But just now you said you believed him, so you never bothered to check.
Order. We are still trying to find out when you said Mr. Mnangagwa, Vice President Mohadi, who is Mr. Mnangagwa? Let's find out from our side. There are possibilities. There are so many.
I do for the letter that is on record is simply written. If I may. I had pains also. That is why I was trying to inquire.
What's the what is dated with?
The letter dated 22 October.
The one who signed Emerson.
Says Emerson Mnangagwa. I did not want to just say Emerson Mnangagwa.
And then it's written.
It then says President. But then I will come later on whether or not this letter originated from that office. I do not want to conclude as a matter of fact that this letter was written by the President, because I don't know his signature, but those questions will come so that you can then verify that indeed this was from the President.
Yeah, but our interest is that we refer to a letter signed and this title President.
Yes.
So respectively, you could have said, this letter is supposed to come from, or suspect, from President, but I have doubt, so that we don't look to be respectful of the President. You say Mr. Mnangagwa, then you say Vice President.
No, that I do follow and consider that it could have been said otherwise. That I do follow and take that up.
Okay.
Perhaps for the avoidance of doubt, you confirm that this letter was from the President.
I believe so.
Emerson Mnangagwa, as it is indicated.
I believe so. It was delivered to me in a lovely envelope with a government vehicle. I believe it came directly from His Excellency the President.
Then thank you for that. I would, Chairperson, I'm sure it has been verified. And then, proceeding on that one, what I was asking is that when I inquired from you whether you made any attempt to verify Shepherd Tundia's identity, you said you believed him. But now you are saying you made an attempt to check with the Vice President Mohadi. Which one then do we believe? Was it based on your belief? Or you checked with the Vice President, but the Vice President took long to revert back to you in as far as the identity of Tundia is concerned?
Well, both. I still haven't had a response or a confirmation from the Honourable Vice President. But I did ask him, and up until right now, I still don't know absolutely, what Mr. Tundia's official designation is.
Thank you.
We were standing together in a group. I could hear what was happening. I could see what was happening.
So tell this committee whether we had 400,000 or it was a perception, so that we proceed to the next point.
I heard 400,000 discussed, and it was confirmed for me by my mining director, who was standing right next to me.
No, we are not yet there. We are with you. Your mining directors will speak for themselves, not through you. Why would you say it was a perception when we had the figure of 400,000? Is there any explanation of that?
Well, hearing gives rise to a perception.
When
I understood it. I understood it. I apologize if I haven't made myself very clear, but I'll try to. I think that you might be trying to trip me up or something.
No, I have no reason. Hearing and understanding are two different things. Do you agree?
Okay, I heard that.
Yes. You can hear something and have your own understanding. Is that correct? But definitely the figure of 400,000, if you hear it, tell us that again. The figure.
I heard 400,000.
Yes, that is why I am saying why you were then you saying it was the perception when you heard it. Because you seem to be wasting time on one issue, straightforward issue, where you are supposed to say, I heard so and so requesting so much. Why were you trying to evade and not going direct on that issue? You should have an explanation somewhere. Why were you avoiding? Going direct to say, I heard you.
Like I said, we were standing in a group. Honorable Chikomba was that side, Leonard Tundia was this side, Honorable Sabanda was somewhere in between, and I was this side with
No, that we agree.
With my mining director, David Stein. And it was 5 months ago. I cannot categorically state absolutely whatever, but what I can tell you is I very clearly understood that there was an expectation for $400,000 to be paid to Mr. Chikomba, and that is why he asked for a piece of paper and he wrote his bank details down. I understood it. And when I objected to the $400,000, there was a counter offer made of 50%, $200,000, and the balance paid when the contract was signed. I heard it.
Thank you. In your own wisdom, you easily think that anyone sensible would give the person bank details to transfer this money directly into the account, which obviously has trade.
Which obviously has.
Yes, trade.
At a trail.
Yes. You think, in your own evidence and wisdom, do you think it's normal?
I was very surprised that Honorable Chikomba had given me his bank details. I was very surprised indeed that he had done it.
Who handed over the paper with bank details to you?
I can't remember.
Can't remember.
We were a group. Honorable Chikomba asked for the piece of paper. He wrote the bank details. Whether he handed it to Mr. Sabanda, whether he handed it to Mr. Tundia, but it came to me.
It ended up in your hand.
Yes, it ended up in my hand.
What else was written in that paper?
Well, I then took the piece of paper upstairs, and I then wrote on that piece of paper the other persons who were there, and on that same piece of paper, I got the business card from Mr. Temba Mliswa, and I attached it, and then I kept the whole lot together. It was a record for me. what had happened.
Other than the bank details, the other information was written
By me. It's my handwriting. The other information, the information about the bank details, that is Honourable Chikomba's handwriting. The contact details for Anele Ndebele, Honourable Ndebele, Honourable Sabanda, and were written in my handwriting.
Thank you. Didn't you think it was wise to transfer money into this account and then say, I caught him red-handed?
I did not want to. I did not want to catch anybody red-handed. I was not in the business of trying to rat anybody. I'm a highly pressurized Zimbabwean businessman trying to keep nearly 2,000 people employed. I was simply trying to survive and move on to the next day. I didn't want to catch Honourable Chikomba out at all, nor anybody.
So when you testify before this committee, what is your intention?
Thank you for asking me that question, because it's something that I would like to state. My intention, these events happened. The following week, His Excellency attended the Arcadian Lithium opening, out here at Arcturus. It was after the Arcturus opening that I then telephoned Vice President Mohadi, and I said, Baba, I'm confused and I'm unhappy. Please, can I come and see you? And he said, yes, come. And I went to go and see Vice President Mohadi. I sat in his office. He gave me a cup of tea. And then he said, what is worrying you? And I told him the events.
Thank you.
He then said to me, are you prepared to testify? And I said to him, I will do whatever is the right thing to do. I don't want to cause trouble for anybody. I don't want to cause hassles for anybody. I just want to do the right thing. I have a letter here from His Excellency congratulating me and referring to let us build Zimbabwe. I want to do that. I don't want to be involved in things that are bad. So my motivation is not to cause trouble for anybody. My motivation is to do what is right for our nation, Zimbabwe.
Thank you. Then that is what we've always done.
That's what I've tried to do, yes. That's always what I've tried to do.
Even including indirectly paying for facilitation fees requested by some government official.
Whenever I've done that, I've examined my mind. Whenever I've done that, I've examined my mind and I've looked at things. I've referred the matter to Mafukidze for his advice. And when what we have done has had the greater benefit for a wider community, we have done it. Like we have put roofs on schools, we've built classrooms, we've bought buses for schools, we built a library, we built dormitories.
Thank you. Whatever you've done, let's agree that you said this was an indirect way of trying to please certain people, but not directly through facilitation. In other words, it was sanitizing the demand for that man.
No, it wasn't sanitizing it. It was responding to a request for assistance from a specific community group that needed assistance.
It means there's another explanation that you should give us on how you indirectly managed to please those who were requesting money from you. As these are not the community that we are not talking about. You are saying that request would have been from that community. What about those who unlawfully requested money from you? How then did you please them?
I've never had requests for money per se for an individual.
Thank you. You understand this is it's being recorded. So take note of that. Now that after the person whom we are saying was the chairperson is left, who initially also considered that that person was also an invitee.
I beg your pardon?
I'm saying, now that Honorable Mliswa was out of the picture, right? Your case is that you then had Honorable Swanda and Honorable Chiko. And you allege that they demanded money. In the absence of these two, right? What then did you do to allege even the person who was chairing the meeting that how come your fellow guys are now requesting money from you? What is going on? Did you demand any explanation?
I sent the following day. I sent a text message to the persons who were there, and I said to them that I could not entertain such things. I had a telephone conversation, like I told you earlier, with Honourable Ndebele as I was descending down the hill towards Salou. I believe that I adequately communicated, and I adequately communicated that to Mr. Shepherd Dundia. He was the guy who called me to the meeting. I hadn't asked for this meeting. I didn't know the people in the meeting. It was my first time to meet them. So I contacted Mr. Dundia first thing the next morning and said, no, Shepherd, this is Cocker. I don't want to be involved with this. I'm going home now.
So you never bothered to inform the chairperson or any other person who was involved from the 4 MPs?
The following week, I discussed the matter with Mr. Temba Mliswa, Honourable Temba Mliswa, and I communicated it to Honourable Temba Mliswa the following week, which I think was the 21st of November.
That there was a demand for money?
Yes.
How come the statement does not show that?
I believe my statement does say that.
Where exactly?
I advised Honourable Temba Mliswa that I am a passionate and loyal Zimbabwean who is committed to the reconstruction of our Zimbabwean economy, and that proper and official processes must always be followed and adhered to. I then showed Honourable Temba Mliswa much prized and appreciated letter that I had received from His Excellency President Emerson Mnangagwa, which clearly motivates all citizens of Zimbabwe to pull together and build our Zimbabwean economy. As stated by His Excellency, we must all work to restore the status of our great nation, Zimbabwe, as an economic leader of Southern Africa. I believe that by bringing these disturbing events to the attention of the Parliament of Zimbabwe, J R Goddard contracting and fulfilling our part and role in this country.
Does this statement say you advise Honourable Temba Mliswa that 2 honourables had demanded or requested 400,000 from you?
No, it does not specifically say that.
Thank you. And
order, I think we've been on about an hour now. I think we should think of